Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for our Fireside Chat with Mandy Goodhandy. My name is Alicia Seguire, Alumni Coordinator Special Projects here at Sheridan, and I go by the pronouns she, her. I'm so glad so many of you are joining us for this very important conversation tonight. We recognize that the conversation may be difficult or triggering for some, so on the screen, you will see a listing. I'm just going to share my screen right now. I will share it after. It's not working right now, but I will share it after. But we do have a list of resources. So if you need anything at any time, please, I'm happy to share those. And I will put up the 24/7 number in the chat that you can call from Canadian Mental Health Association if needed. Tonight, Mandy will take us on an inspiring journey of discovery and survival as she shares her story, growing up as a little boy in Scotland to become a successful Toronto club owner and Canada's first transgender woman stand-up comedian. This talk will be filled with honesty, humor, and messages of hope and empowerment. As well, it will bring understanding and awareness about the transgender experience and how allies can support transgender individuals and contribute to creating a more inclusive society. As we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land we have the privilege to gather on today. We acknowledge that all the Sheridan campuses reside on land that has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous peoples have lived on and passed through this territory. We recognize this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two Row One Pond Treaty, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. As you may be participating virtually from different locations, we acknowledge that many diverse nations and territories from which you are joining. As an institution of higher learning, Sheridan recognizes and embraces the critical role education must play in facilitating real transformational change. We continue our collective efforts to recognize Canada's colonial history and take steps towards meaningful truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Now, I want to introduce two trailblazers who are creating change and safe space in our society for the LGBTQ+ community. First, I would like to introduce Sheridan grad and transgender comedian, singer, author, and advocate, Mandy Goodhandy. Yes, round of applause.
Round of applause from everybody.
So Mandy graduated from Sheridan's two-year business course in 1974 and then from the musical theater program in 1976. She recently released her first album and book, both titled Just Call Me Lady. She has been living as a transgender woman for over 25 years and enjoys bringing her unique brand of comedy to the mainstream. She was the first Canadian trans woman to be accepted to participate in SheDot, Toronto's Festival of Funny Women in 2015 and 2016, and she was also the first transgender woman to be accepted to sing in the Toronto's Jazz Festival in 2016. I think we're going to hear a lot about the first. Mandy is exceptional, and she was definitely the trailblazer. Mandy has since performed at many venues in Toronto as a cabaret artist. Currently, she's also entertainment booking agent for live entertainment venues. So it's also my pleasure to introduce Peter here, who will be our host for the evening. Peter is a professor in Sheridan's Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in English and Literacy Studies. In 2021, Peter broke new ground at Sheridan with the introduction of a course in queer studies, a first for Sheridan among the first of its kind taught in any college in Ontario. Well done, Peter.
Thank you.
As a scholar with a research focus on building supportive, community-minded campus climates, Peter identified a clear gap in the Ontario college sector when it came to queer studies. He developed a rigorous academic opportunity for LGBTQ+ students and allies at Sheridan and built a diverse supportive community of scholars in queer studies. He currently teaches the LGBTQ+ studies in degree breadth elective stream here at Sheridan. He recently earned his PhD from University of Toronto in education with a study of the school lives of queer youth and community college. For 14 years before joining Sheridan, Pierre taught abroad in higher education in Thailand, Beijing, Vietnam, and Japan. And we are very happy to say that he has been with Sheridan since 2006, and Peter proudly identifies as queer. Please join me in welcoming our two guests tonight, Mandy and Peter. Welcome to you both.
What a welcome. What a welcome. Thank you so much, Alicia. So Alicia, thank you for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to this conversation and getting to know more about Mandy and Mandy's excellent work, advocacy, and activism. So we should get started. So Mandy, you have this incredible story. I'd like to know whether you're ready to share your personal journey of self-discovery to become the success that you are today. Are you ready?
If I wasn't, I wouldn't have published a book. But I'm ready. Anything you want. I love the fact that I was invited. Anyway, please go ahead.
Well, this is an amazing opportunity for us because, you know, Mandy, you're not just a performer and an entertainer, but you were a cultural luminary in Toronto, and you're a published author. You are an entrepreneur. You are a graduate of our institution, and you are a fierce presence in the Toronto queer scene, and have been for some time. And it's such a pleasure to meet you. Such a pleasure to meet you and have this talk. So, if we're ready, so you have an incredible life story, Mandy, and we can't wait to hear about it, your journey of discovery and survival. Can you describe that journey for us, of self-discovery and realization that you were trans, and tell us how that has led to the success you have today?
Okay. The big one. All our stories start when we're children, and especially queer children. And what a lot of people don't understand is that is where it begins. A lot of people think that we become something, or we are maneuvered into something. And it's never the case when you really look back, if you're looking back as an individual, or if you're just talking to someone who is queer. Right from the beginning, we basically know. We just don't know what it is. And we know what it is a little more now, the younger generation does, because the resources are so much there for their reach. There's more resources. But back in the day when, I was born in 1953. So we're talking back in the day. And here I was in Glasgow, Scotland, a really tough city.
A Glaswegian.
Glaswegian through and through. And so I knew there was something different, not wrong. I knew there was something different about me. I had an older brother, older sister. I preferred hanging with the older sister. I preferred playing with dolls with her, and not that that's a sign, but it's certainly a little red flag that, meanwhile, my family's trying to bring me up as a boy, and I didn't naturally ever feel like one. And it was quite a struggle, because my father in particular, who was a very tough man, was toughening me up. But as the years went along, I blamed him for that. But it took me a long while to look back and go, he was trying to protect me in a strange way. It was like, when you start going to school, you
gotta
better
stop
change.
this.
Exactly. And it was like, and I didn't know how. It's like, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I like to do. I found any excuse I could to put on anything that even resembled a dress. You know, Halloween comes up and I want to be a Roman soldier.
Or a princess.
Yeah, well, I was never allowed to be a princess. This is the thing. I had to pick male costumes that had something, that there was a skirt, there was a dress, a priest, something with something, you know, something like that. And then my excuse was, oh, what do you mean? I'm not wearing a dress. I'm a Roman soldier. You know, and my brother would say things to me like, well, then if you're a Roman soldier, what the hell's with the heels and the purse? You know, it's like, because it was just comfortable for me. It was
Mhm.
naturally comfortable for me. But once you hit school, then all of a sudden you have to adjust to them, especially back in the day. They didn't have to adjust to me.
Did
I
you
had to
wear
adjust.
uniforms and go to
Yeah,
Catholic
and I had the
school?
whole school uniform. They accidentally put me in a boys' school uniform, and it was very uncomfortable and it just wasn't natural. But the thing was, the kids were still asking me if I was, are you a wee boy or a wee girl? And it's because just the way I was naturally, it came off that way. You know, and they were giving me nicknames and everything else. They called me wee lassie, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, should I be flattered by that? That they realize a mistake was made, you
It's
know?
empowering, isn't it? But at
It-
such a young age,
yeah,
it actually occurred to you that, you know, you could take that and you could use it to empower you and to make you more fabulous, or you could take it and really hate yourself and be more depressed.
yes. And I guess I was very independent. I was always quite independent. My mother told me that about me. I would do these things that just surprised her. You know, my first time on stage, I was like 6 years old, and she was cleaning churches. And the minister came up to her in one of the churches and said, oh, by the way, your child is going to be in a concert. And my mother said, I didn't know what they were talking about. But as I was roaming around the church, I wandered into this room where they were rehearsing for a concert. And I just started singing along with them. And they decided to bring me up on stage.
How old were you?
I was about 6 years old then.
6 years old. So that
And
was the
all I
start of your
remember
career.
is just the music carrying me away and the feeling I had and the happiness. And, you know, it was like closest to I could get to being myself, and the darkness, but the bright stage lights on you. And it was absolutely incredible. And everyone in the audience laughing and clapping, and me not realizing they're singing songs that have nothing to do with clapping and laughing. They were laughing at this little kid, you know, sitting on a chair with legs swinging back and forth. And the thing is, that was my first experience on stage. So all ran into each other. You know, all of my life seemed to be a pattern that ended up, one piece of my life would meet up with another piece of my life as I was going along.
Happy accidents.
Yes, and it was like that all the way through. It was like, oh, and all these moments I had in my head. That's why I gotta write this down. It was because it was kind of like, I did not know that, but I know that now. I know now. You know, there's a lot of questions were answered as I went along, and it was interesting how it happened.
Well, that's all about, I mean, in my scholarship, that's all about identity formation. And it's interesting because a lot of people come to identity formation in their teen years or in their early 20s. And yet you're telling us that this happened for you when you were, you know, 6 or 7 years old, right?
As far as back as I can remember, anyway. That's as far as back as I can remember.
Was it frightening or was it?
No, that's the interesting thing. The only thing that frightened me about being different was I didn't want anybody to hit me.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing. I was always terrified that some big boy would come over and hit me because I was so different. And I was fortunate that that didn't happen. And that's probably because I had a big brother, you know, 2 years older than me, who would have beat the crap out of them, you know, if they had picked on me, you know, and me not knowing he was actually threatening people. I did not know that. I was like, this ain't way. But anyway, it was kind of like, it was very, very strange. And I noticed that as I went along, my sister and my brother were always protecting me. Always.
You're very fortunate.
I was extremely fortunate, and you know, not everybody has that. But I had to learn how to. This is the thing where theater became natural for me. I had to learn how to be a boy, and then how to be a man. I had to pretend I was something I wasn't. I had to memorize the way boys would talk and walk and act and what they liked and what they didn't like. And I was living a character through, even when I was a child, I was trying to learn this. It wasn't working, but I was really, really trying to learn it. I thought, okay, they're calling me Wee Lassie. And then the family moved to Canada in 1965, and we're on this big ocean liner. And then I realized I'm away from those bullies now. Now I have to really become a boy so that when I land in Canada, they'll treat me right and they won't pick on me. And one of those things that I ended up joining Sea Cadets when I ended up in Canada. When I was about 12 years old, I joined the Sea Cadet Corps. And one of the reasons I joined the Sea Cadet Corps, they didn't have girls in the Sea Cadet Corps back then.
They had sailors, though.
Yes, it was sailors, but I didn't join because of the sailors, because that part of my life I hadn't really thought about yet, about my sexuality. That didn't start coming into play, because that was something you just shoved in that closet and just left it there. Because I had trouble enough trying to be a boy, let alone trying to be a boy who's attracted to boys. And I thought, no, this is just not going to happen. So I did join the Sea Cadets. And on the way over in the boat, which was interesting, was the fact that my sister and I went to this, they had a little Halloween thing, they had all these things for kids, and a little dress up party they had. And by the time my older sister and I got there, there was only 2 costumes left. And one was like a fairy and the other one was a sailor, right? And of course I wanted the fairy outfit. It had little wings, right? But I had to wear the sailor. But the other thing in my mind, I'm thinking later on, I'm going, I became both of those things at one time or another when I was in Canada. A fairy and a sailor. And so that all kind of fell in place, right?
Yes, yes. So what a metaphor.
It was interesting. Yeah, it's one of my bits. So.
And how old were you when you emigrated?
12.
12. That's a really important age. So you were just about to start secondary school.
Yes. Well.
So a fresh start. Was it different from living in Scotland?
Oh yeah, everything was different.
But I mean, your school experience? No,
it was worse. When I arrived in Canada, and once people got past the Scottish accent, the kids would say to me, put on a Scottish accent or speak Scottish. That's what it always was. Speak Scottish, say something in Scottish. And I'm kind of going, well, I am saying something in Scottish. It's like, so it was very, very weird. But once they got past the accent and they got over that was something new, that's when they started noticing how effeminate I was, even though I was pretending I wasn't. And I thought I was fooling people. I really did. It's like I was shocked a lot of the times, and it was kind of like, oh, how did you know? Like, and like, so that was terrorizing. It was, then the bullies started. Another fascinating thing that ties it all in is my nickname in Canada was Little Girl.
Like Wee Lass.
Exactly. So Wee Lassie in Scotland and Little Girl in Canada. I can't get a break here. I can't even get away from the nickname. They're just saying it differently. But that's what they were always saying to me. And all the way through high school, they still called me Little Girl because I wasn't very good at sports until I realized I was. But I didn't know I was because I was being picked on so much that I was too scared to do anything.
So which sports did you play?
I ended up becoming very good at gymnastics. Being a natural dancer, that helped. I was always dancing.
Yeah.
Gymnastics and track and field.
Gymnastics and track and field. And we might suggest that a lot of queer youth are very good at track and field because they have to run away from their bullies.
Yes. And also it's an individual sport. You don't have to bother, but you can get lost in yourself.
It's like a Lance Kerwin thing. There was a Lance Kerwin teenage film years ago in the 70s about a boy who wet the bed, who became a track star because he would run home from school every day because his mother would hang his sheets out his window, stained with urine. And he didn't want his friends to see. So, and then he becomes a track and field star.
Interesting little story.
A weird little story made for television. Do you feel like all of the, not just the experiences in your youth, which we've just started talking about, Have these experiences made you stronger? And do you think they've led to your success?
There's a lot of things combined that led to what you want to consider success, but the way I see it, if you want to put it, if you want to call it success, let's touch on that for a minute.
Sure.
Have I always done things that make me happy? Yes. Have I always had a job or work that makes me happy? Yes. So to me, in my mind, that's success for me. You know, it's not necessarily success for everybody else. Some people may look at success as money or power or all
Yes.
sorts of different reasons. But for me, I've been very fortunate that I have been able to have my own businesses. I've been able to be comfortable. That also stems from the fact that I didn't work well with others only because, not their fault, my fault, only because I had those experiences trying to work with other people and how I was not accepted most of the time. And
Do you think you had to work harder than other people to become who you are?
I think me personally, I did. That doesn't mean everybody does, but I had to work harder because I had to reinvent myself as a male and then tear all that down again when I realized I didn't have to be. I could be who I always wanted to be, and then start relearning.
And what age was that, if you don't mind my asking?
When I came to realization that I was always a girl. I was always meant to be a girl. And when I came to that realization, and then I look back and I remember the little girl. And the way I always put it is, I went back to her and it was like, I remember you. I remember you're always there. You're always there. And now I'm reaching out again because this is reality here. It's like you and me, and this is exactly who I am.
You call it completion in your book.
Yes, my book is completion because of the fact that I don't disown. And a lot of the times, I'm not judging other trans people, by the way. We're all different. I don't disown my male side. I do not disown the fact that, yes, I have some male traits. I have likes and dislikes you would consider male. I hate to put that into boxes either. But the thing was, it's like taking those pieces and realizing that it all happened for a reason. And the realization was so exciting to me. And that happened in a very strange situation.
Tell me about the strange situation.
Grad was skipping a lot, but let's go forward. I went to music theater. Do you want to do the chronologically, or do you want me to just go back and forward?
Let's make this organic and talk because I have the guiding questions. So you went to music theater.
Okay. Yeah, the music theater after high school, which was horrible. High school was the worst experience of my life.
Me too. Me too. You're not alone.
Oh no, it was terrible. It was terrible. And you know what? Probably for most people, it doesn't matter who you were or what you were. I mean, sure, even probably the captain of the football team had a horrible time, and we just didn't know about it. It's like we don't know other people's personal lives. They don't talk about it. They do now online, and they're telling the whole world about their nonsense. But the thing is, back then, I mean, nobody was talking about it. Nobody was sharing that with each other. It was considered weakness to talk to others about something you were feeling, scared about, or you were feeling worried about.
Well, queer was taboo when you were a young person. Yes, when I was a young person, it was.
Well, yes, for sure, especially, and I have to keep saying that, especially back then. And I'm not saying it's any better now, because I don't know. I'm not living that life now. But I know there are still scared kids out there. I know there are kids that are terrified out there, and they're putting it out there, making it look like they're confident with selfies or whatever it is they're doing, but you can tell that they're not.
They're vulnerable.
They're not comfortable. Exactly. And then those are the ones I just want to reach out and go, oh, darling, give me a hug, and I'll tell you something that you might need later on. It's hard, you know, because I didn't have that. I didn't have those kind of role models or anybody I could look up to and go, could you tell me what's going on with me and why I'm feeling this way? Could you help make me feel better?
Eve Kosofsky-Sedgwick, the critic, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, she talked about an avunculate. And an avunculate would be, in terms of gender and queer, an avunculate would be a trusted adult, usually from your family circle, who would walk you through what it was to be you. I didn't have one. Did you?
Certainly not. No. No, how could I have? Nobody understood who the hell I was, and I didn't even understand it. But the Sheridan College thing was a beautiful experience for me, and in many ways. After high school was over, I was scared to go to college. A couple of my teachers that I was studying with, the ones I liked, and there was very few in a high school, even they were picking on me, especially the gym teacher. But I got him back, by the way. When I was a Sea Cadet, I did these summer training camps in the summer. And that's how I ended up becoming better and better as an athlete, because I was doing it because I wanted to do it, not because I was forced to do it. And so when he noticed the talent I had in track and field, and he wanted me to join the track team. And so I basically, no, I don't have time for that. I'm in Sea Cadets, I'm away every weekend, and I've got things to do. And I thought, screw you. You know, why should I run for you or run for this high school? I hated feeling that way. And when I look back on it, it was kind of not very nice, but neither was he. You know, he'd be calling me little girl too and laughing along with the guys, you know, in gym class. It was horrible.
That's cruel. That is cruel, and educators should never do that. And they don't understand how traumatizing it is and how enduring the effects of that kind of abuse are on young queer people.
Exactly. They didn't understand it. And it was like, it was shocking for me. It was like I was traumatized. I would go home and I didn't want to talk about it. You know, I was holding it all in, and I was just, you know, doing the best I could. And every time I got on stage, like I was mentioning and touching on that, or I got a chance to dance, it all just disappeared, because it was all kind of like, this is my love, this is what I love, this is what I'm feeling, the happiness that came out of me, you know, while I was doing something I love. And that's what held me together. That is what made it tolerable to go through what I was going through, you know. And it was terrible. When I think back now, I wish I knew what I know, you know, back then, what I know now. I mean, I probably could have more answers. But the other thing is I had my humor as well. You know, I would laugh it off, you know.
So were you sort of the class clown or the funny
No, not even
kid?
close, because I didn't want to talk. I would not even talk. But the thing is, it's like I had a sense of humor, and so I was able to kind of charm some people, you know, because I was funny. And I didn't even realize I was funny. But the thing is, it's like they kind of went, oh, and if you make someone laugh, and then I learned that connection, again, everything connecting. When I started doing comedy, that's when I learned I can talk about being trans. I could talk about sex work. I could talk about anything as long as I'm making it funny. People are learning. People are listening, because you're not yelling at them and demanding anything out of them. You're going, matter of fact, but you know, it's that kind of a thing. And then I get people that come up to me after a comedy show and they say that, I know someone who is trans and she never even talked about that. Do you think that's how she's feeling?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that type of thing. That's only one example. And I would say that's exactly how she's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, stop being careful, you know, because that's what they would say. They would say, do I call her? What happens if I make a mistake? What if I, and I'm saying, you cannot make mistakes. You can't. If you're talking to someone you care about and you want to learn and you want to know about them, sit and listen and let them tell you. If you make a mistake with a pronoun, they will correct you, but they're not going to jump down your throat. And it's a natural thing. It's like when I was talking to my family and breaking the news, it's the same thing. My pronouns are different. you call me by the wrong pronoun in public, you're gonna look stupid, not me.
You just mentioned your family, and I wanted to ask you, what were the challenges that you faced during transition, and especially maybe during your process of coming out, and how did you overcome those challenges? Because you were a young kid, new in Canada, trying to get rid of your Scottish accent, running for your life on the track team. So how what challenges happened when you were growing up?
Well, I didn't do any coming out at that point at any time, so I didn't have that to deal with. I was a late bloomer when it comes to sexuality. I was so scared to have sex with anybody. And don't get me wrong, when I was in high school, I was very attracted to girls. But in my head, I wanted to join a boy in with us, but I never even had like sex, even in high school. It was making out and, kind of being adventurous. And I was always comfortable with women, with girls. They were my friends, and it was like, it was comfortable because they never made fun of me. They never thought anything of it, of who I was, or the fact that I was feminine. And in fact, a lot of girls were attracted to me because I was feminine, which was kind of odd. But I think it's because I was caring. I was very caring with them. And so I would never have dared hit on a boy. It happened to me, but I didn't even realize that I was so stupid about it. It's like boys hit on me. And then they would tell me later on, and years ago, when you were in high school, I hit on you, and you kind of, I thought you wanted me to go with you, and then you were going to beat me up after. It's like, I didn't know, I was just afraid. I was afraid all the time.
So did you fear disapproval from your family or from the community, or more bullying at school?
Well, that part definitely would be bullying at school more than anything else. My family I had two coming outs, okay? And the first one, when I came to the realization that I didn't necessarily prefer boys, but I had decided I wanted to experiment with boys. And so that was a coming out, because I was never one to hide anything from my family. My family saw that little girl. That little girl was always that little girl all the way through. It was like when I was in my own house, I acted and I was the way I was. So there was no big shock for them. And so when I basically experimented my first time, which was after a musical, actually, and after I was almost done at Sheridan Musical Theatre. So I'd been there for 4 years, and I still had never been with a male. And it was a cast party. And it was for Brigadoon, and it was before transition, obviously. And I played Harry, who was the lead dancer in the show. And I'm not going to mention names, but anyway, this guy came up to me at the cast party. And it's the first time I'd ever been hit on that I was aware of at this party. And I said, "Can I give you a ride home?" And he lived in Toronto. And I said, "Well, I live in Oakville," because I was still going to Sheridan. I was living on campus, kind of thing. And he said, "Oh, I can give you a ride home tomorrow." And it still didn't hit me right away. And I was thinking, what is this? I wasn't even a natural blonde. I mean, I don't know. It was just, so I'm kind of sitting there thinking, I'm sorry for anybody who's a natural blonde. I didn't mean it that way. It was just an old joke. But anyway, so, and then I realized, and I came to the realization, I went, "Oh, I understand now." And then I said yes. And so I ended up going home with him. It was the worst sex I'd ever had with anybody. And he never gave me a ride home the next day either. He dropped me off at the GO train station. And so that's when I learned that life isn't really for me. It's like, I don't understand it. Because obviously this guy he was also in the closet, because he was in theater. And they used to always say, especially back then, there's 3 sexualities back then. There's gay, there's straight, and then there's theater. Okay, that's just the way it is. And theater was never, and I'm sure you know this, people were not out even in theater. I mean, you just couldn't be. You couldn't be telling people that you were queer.
Because
Because you ended up not being able to get cast in a role, or people were just judging. You know, it was all about people judging. And it was a very underground thing. It was very underground. You didn't talk about it. You know, with that kind of a situation. Anyway, so that's what ended up happening. And now the transition is like when I told my family I was gay and everything, they were fine. My dad was horrible, but everybody else was fine. And my mother said, well, I always knew you were artistic. Right. And so that was kind of interesting.
well, I always knew you're artistic, didn't
Artistic, and she said it with the accent, of course. So, and then my dad, all he could do was just sit there and go, don't tell me you're queer. Are you queer? And it's like he was using that word before it became cool, right? So it was like, and then I thought, I don't have to answer to you. You know, I'm telling you, Dad, because I want you to know. I'm not looking for your approval. You know, and so that's what it was all about.
So you came out as queer. We didn't use the word queer back
As
in
gay,
that day.
yeah.
And then when was the next transition, and how did relationships differ or change when you finally realized the identity that you wanted to live, and you came out as trans? How did that work?
Okay, well, I started, this was after Sheridan, this was after when I did some theater, cabaret work. Realized that the only way to survive in theater was to become a server in a bar. So almost all of us end up in that line of business. So I was working in this bar as a server, and it was interesting because I started off as a server. I'm kind of, walking around and serving drinks, and then I'm getting all this attention, and it was kind of interesting. And I'm going, oh my, it's like, maybe I am cute after all. It's like, it was that kind of thing going on. And then I ended up working behind the bar, and that was similar to being on stage. It was quite interesting. It was like I became this bartender, this character, where I'm having fun with everybody and joking and going back and forth. And it became this kind of like an education in, what do you call that when you're...
Well, minor celebrity. I mean, because
No,
in the industry in Toronto,
no, what I meant was improv. It's like being an improv. It's like, you're a bartender, you're serving drinks, go. So it was that kind of a thing. But then I thought, pardon?
Judith Butler talks about this in terms of gender and performativity. And the question every day is, how am I going to perform my gender? That's a very simple understanding of what Judith Butler says, but how will I be performing today is a question.
Wow.
And that is intimately connected to the ideas of identity formation and coming out. So some people have the luxury of deciding how they will perform on a certain day, and others of us did not or do not have that luxury. But it sounds like that was a pivotal moment, working in the industry and tending bar, and suddenly you started becoming.
Well, I started becoming, I was in the gay world, and I pushed open the door. That's what that whole thing was about, starting to live in the gay world, and then realizing that I wasn't even comfortable. I still wasn't comfortable because I wasn't a man. And here I am trying to be a gay man. And I didn't understand why I couldn't have an authentic gay relationship. And I didn't feel comfortable in the gay world. I was always on the outside looking in, it seemed, all the way along my whole progression. It was always, I was never in any group of people. I was always watching. I was always, like an audience, and that's what always seemed to me anyway. But there was an ad that came out in a newspaper. It was a full-page ad for all you young people. Newspapers will say you turn the pages and okay. So Anyway, this big advertisement, this was going on in now we're in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And this splash ad came out at this Tropicana nightclub that was downtown Toronto. And it was a full page ad of this male stripper. And his name was Mr. Tease. That was the very first male stripper in Toronto, anywhere, and certainly not in a gay bar. Gay bars, that was unheard of, but this was in a strip club. And I'm looking at this ad and I'm going, and it wasn't the guy I was attracted to, it was what he was doing that I was attracted to. And I thought, a stripper. And then these ads started coming up, amateur strip contest. And I'm thinking, that would be fun. It's amateur stripping, right? So what I did was I went to a friend who was, he used to come to the bar, the gay bar, and he was a costume designer. And I went to him and I said, I want you to design me a costume that I can strip out of. And so he made me this costume. It was a cowboy. Okay, and it was like a white with red sequin trim, a little vest with fringe, and a pair. He made this pair of chaps. It was fur, like white fur chaps, and he made the pants underneath would zip up the side like this, and they would come apart. You could keep on the chaps, and the pants would just come off, right? Then matching G-string, and then I choreographed all the songs that I was going to do, 3 songs, and I choreographed them like a professional dancer would. And then I went to this amateur strip contest, and it was $100 for the winner, and it was about 20 guys there trying out, you know, and here I am in this dressing room with all these guys and kind of looking at them going, oh my God, they're all like built like, they have all these bodies and everything. I was just kind of this slender kind of dancey body, you know, that kind of body. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. And I went out on stage and I used the song on the hot summer night. Would you offer yourself to the wolf, the red roses? And it was that kind of a song. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a talking at the beginning. Was it Meatloaf? It was Meatloaf. And anyway, so the women went silent. It was all women. The place was packed. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to laugh at me. They're going to start throwing something at me. And so I'm just standing there while the whole dialogue is being done. And then it goes into the dance part. And I started dancing. They went crazy. And it was like, oh,
This kid can move. This kid can dance.
and it was the costume as well. They were blown away. It's like they're looking at this costume. And I thought, you know, I mean, the guys in the dressing were looking at it. Are you wearing that? And it's like, it was very gay. I mean, come on. It was really, really gay. But it was incredible looking. You know, it was a beautiful costume. And then I had it all choreographed when you unzip, when you do this, when you do that. And anyway, I won the contest. So what happened? The guy that owned the club offered me a contract right there. And then they said, can you come and work here every Saturday night? You know, we want you to be a feature. And he goes, but you have to have 2 shows. And I only had the 1. So I went back to the costume designer. I said, I have another idea for a show. Make me a tuxedo that tears away, the top hat. I have the top hat and the cane. And I come out to, hey, big spender, you know, and I walked out and all the girls are screaming. And then I went into a tap routine. They were not ready for it. And I can do that, you know, from chorus line. I'm watching Cisco Pitter Pat.
So you tap in addition to everything else, published author, queer icon.
Well, I was a dancer. I was always a dancer. So, but and all I'm saying is, okay, that was when all the stripping happened. And then from there, I choreographed a couple of drag shows. I don't know if you ever heard of the Great Imposters. They were a big group that traveled all over Ontario. They were way ahead of their time. drag in all these small towns.
When was this?
Oh my goodness, you're asking me dates.
In the 70s, maybe?
Yeah, it still would be. It would be going into, no, it was still early 80s.
Okay.
Anyway, so the Great Imposters were huge all over Ontario. And that was impersonation at its best. And the leader of the group had met me in a bar and asked me, because she knew I was a stripper, she says, can you choreograph a set for us? They already had showcases, but I would go there and choreograph after the bar was closed that they were working at. And I would choreograph all these numbers for them and everything. And then another drag group that was just starting up heard about me, and they approached me to choreograph their show.
Right.
And there was 3 members of the show, and one was a country type gal, and the other one did Barbra Streisand, and then the other one was very sexy and very dancey, like she was the dancer, and it was great. So anyway, I'm choreographing this cute little number for the country girl, and then I choreographed Hello Dolly with this other impersonator. And then I did Dee Dong, which is a song from Irma la Douce, which is another musical I did for the dancer. And so there was 2 backup boys for her. She backed out the last minute. The show was going to go on that weekend. And guess who had to do herself up?
You.
Me. So that was my experience with drag.
That was your first drag performance.
My first drag performance, and it was a full dance routine, and the gays were all screaming. It was a Studio 2. Older people might remember that bar. And under the floor, the basement part, there was a theater. And so this was like a theater, and it was wonderful. And again, people were going, oh my God, where does she come from? And nobody knew who the hell I was. And they knew all these other drag queens. It was like, okay. And so that's how I was introduced to drag. And then I ended up doing a couple of other solo numbers because they booked me to come in and do drag shows. But I felt this is all going somewhere. Don't panic. So the thing is,
I'm not panicking.
I'm talking to these poor people that I have to listen to. Anyway, so what happened was I was doing the drag shows and everything else, and then I ended up with the strip thing. Back to that again. I ended up, after I was a little along in the strip industry, I ended up buying the agency that was booking me. So I ended up being the booking agent for male strippers all over Ontario.
Okay.
And then this was back, and we're still in the 80s. Not early 80s still, yeah. And a gay bar film, unheard of ever for a gay bar to have strippers. I have to keep stressing that because it had never been done, even in the United States. Male strippers in a gay bar, no.
I don't remember it when I was a young person.
There you are, you're my witness. So,
yeah.
But anyway, they phoned me and they said, and it was Club Colby's. It would end up being.
I know Colby's, yeah.
It was Katrina's before that. And so I was dealing with the guy that owned Katrina's, and he phoned me up and he said, I want strippers, and this place is dead, there's nothing going on. And I said, let me come in and look at it. So I went in to look at the place, and I said, okay, I can bring you feature dancers to build up your Monday nights. I can bring you 2 in, and then I will come and host, but you'll have to pay me for hosting. And that's when I started hosting, traveling with the strip shows, and I was doing drag with the strip shows as a drag queen around Ontario. I learned how to do that because of the Great Imposters. And that's when I started learning that I could do comedy. And that's where the comedy started. And this is why I can bill myself as the first trans woman stand-up comic in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was doing all that. And then, so bringing in the strippers to the gay bar. And then it turned out there was problems along the way, whatever. And I decided I wanted to give up the strip agency at one point. And then the guy who owned Colby's was screwing me around. We'll just leave it at that. And so I ended up leaving Colby's, and I wasn't booking his club anymore. And so I was out of a job. And I had decided to give up the agency because it was just so stressful. And I was still doing a couple of nights at that club, hosting as a drag queen. And I went home one night in a cab. Usually I would take it all off. I would take off my makeup, take up everything, which impersonators used to do back then, by the way. Impersonation is
Before you left the club.
Yes, drag
Yeah.
queens never would hang around in drag, ever.
No,
It was a performance. It would be like, you know, playing a part on Broadway and then going out to a restaurant after dressing your costume. It just doesn't happen. They do that now and they're, you know, whatever. But the thing is, you just didn't. And I did this one night. And I had had 2 or 3 cocktails. Okay, not that that's an excuse, but it helped. So anyway, when I took the cab home, and I lived on Maitland, on Church and Maitland, which is the middle of the trans girl working area. Okay, and I was wearing this lovely fox fur coat that I borrowed off of a friend's wife. Okay, and she said, "Oh, you're going, you know, wear this. It's like it's going to be cold, whatever." So I got out of the cab, legs first, okay, and I'm kind of like coming out, and then I'm standing up, and I'm walking up into the building. And a guy comes right up beside me. And he said, "How much?" And I said, "How much was the cab?" Again, and I felt right back to where I used to be, where I didn't know a damn thing about anything. It went right over my head. And then I said, what do you mean, how much? And he said, "Well, how much are you if I want to get with you?"
Too much.
Yes. Especially the street. Okay, and it's like, so I kind of like, I went, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm not working. One of those lovely ladies will be happy to see you." And then I went inside. And then something came over me the weekend later. I decided to do it again. And I thought that was titillating. It's very, very interesting. And my head was kind of going, there's something about this. It's deeper than I'm even thinking it is. And so I do it again. And then I get out of the cab and it's the same guy is there. And he comes up to me. And I thought, okay, this is how I get rid of them, even though I really didn't want to this time. And I said, "It's $200. And I said, "But you know, I'm only doing this, you know, like a hand job. That's it. I'm sorry if I offended anybody. My prices are higher now, I promise." No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so we go in there. And it was the simplest thing I'd ever gone. It was so simple. And I thought, I got $200 for this. And meanwhile, I'm annoyed at this club and I'm getting rid of my agency. And I thought, why am I doing all that when I could be doing this? You know, and then somebody told me I could run an ad. And it became another persona. So I was running an ad.
Another performance.
Yes, exactly. And then sometimes at night, I would just wander out there, you know, and there'd be adventures all over the place. It was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen or heard of. And it was because, maybe part of it was because I didn't have to. It's because I wanted to. And then I made it into a business. Thank you to Sheridan College business. So I made it into a business.
Sorry to interrupt. It's important to note that it was musical theater first and then business. Yes?
No, it was business first and then music theater.
Okay, so the business diploma from us made you the entrepreneur that you are, and the musical theater made you as fabulous as you are.
I guess if you want to put it that way. So anyway, but that, what happens, because we're getting into the transition, and unfortunately I have to build up to that because otherwise it just comes out of nowhere. But what I realized after I was doing this for a long period of time, I'd left the club, I left the agency, and I was working from home. I was picking and choosing who I would see. I was picking and choosing what I wanted and how much I was going to do and how much I was not going to do. And it was conducted very, very businesslike. And I was meeting a whole different facet of men that I had ever met before. You see, a lot of people confuse gay. I don't know why they still do it, but they think gay men are attracted to trans women. They are not. Okay, they're not attracted to someone who appears as a woman. It's that simple. That's what gay is. So anyway, but that's what they get confused. So what's left? So you have there's a world of men out there that are attracted to trans women. They're not even attracted to drag queens. They're attracted to trans women. There is something they find exotic about us.
Well, you said to me yesterday that drag is not trans.
No, not even close. Because, I mean, we don't live as boys. But drag is boys dressed up, or women dressed up in drag. That's drag. That's a persona, that's a costume, that's a performance, right? But as a trans woman or a trans man, you feel and you live that gender that you're representing. You know,
whether you want to or not. I mean, that's, people see it as a choice. They see it as a lifestyle. They see it as like, you know, I go on cruise ships, or I like to hike, and I like to trans, and it's not a hobby.
No, it's not. It's the way you live, and who you are. But the realization again happened a little slowly for me, but it happened. I started coming to realization that it wasn't about the men. It was about how I was being with the men. And I had realized that I was more me than I had ever been.
How old were you?
Pardon?
How old were you at the time?
Well, you know, it depends on what angle. It's.
I mean, were you in your early 20s?
Yes, I was getting into my 40s at that point.
Okay.
Of course, when I was advertising, I was 29 for about 4 or 5 years through that whole time.
29 plus.
Yeah, you know, it's like 29-ish, but whatever. The thing is, it was, I was mature enough to be able to live that life and not, you know, and be confident and, you know, enjoy myself. But it was the feel I had communicating with these gentlemen that were treating me the way I always wanted to be treated. It was not as some, you know, like, I don't mean it that way as in women should be treated like women. What I mean is the way they were treating me was the way I always thought that men should react to me and treat me. And
I think, and that's part of the becoming, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
And then I became more and more comfortable. And, you know, but the thing is with the drag, the other thing, back to the drag, that was uncomfortable. Drag is not the same thing. That's why I know the difference. That's why I see the difference. That's why I feel the difference. When people compare the two, it's very bothersome for both sides. But the thing is with that is, when I was in drag, I couldn't wait to get that wig off and those false eyelashes and, you know, all that stuff you have to wear as a drag queen, because it was their costume, right? And then all of a performance. It's like I'm dressed as like a sexy lady. I'm greeting people at the door and I'm talking to them. And, you know, for anybody who wonders about sex work, people are always confused about it. The sex part is the smallest part of what sex work is. The sex is small. It's the lead up. It's the talk. It's the seduction.
The companionship.
Conversation, exactly. And a lot of gentlemen out there, they're looking for something, and not all of them are sure what they're looking for. But it's not just an orgasm. And that's the thing. People all think that we all jump into a bed, we get under the blankets, and we're, you know, going for hours with, you know, with clients. It's not the way it works. It's not the way it is. You can ask any madam about that. It's like, it's a very lucrative and interesting line of work. And it is work. It's like anything else. It's a job. Well,
sex work is work. I mean, a lot of people don't think so. But okay, I'm just going to ask Alicia, could you jump in for just a moment, please? I need a really quick break. And could you jump in with question 5?
Sure.
Only at 5. Oh my goodness.
Question 5. I just need to get some water. I'll be right back.
Sure, yes, of course.
All right.
Thank you.
This is fabulous so far.
Oh, But Alicia, the thing is, I combined a lot of stuff into all these different questions too. So I've answered a lot of it.
Yeah, no. So,
Okay.
what are some misconceptions or stereotypes about transgender individuals that you would like to dispel?
Okay, I like the fact that you brought that one up because I didn't make notes on that one in particular. Okay, and it's important that people know this. And again, I'll get back to it. We're not all the same.
Mhm.
We're all individual and we all think differently. We have different politics. We have different ways that we want to present. You know, some want to wear a business suit, some want to wear whatever it is. Some want to be femme, and some want to be just themselves, or some of them want to touch their masculine side. All of that is cool. Okay, but this is just the thing, in my opinion. And one would be, these are my little rules. We are not dressing as a fetish. So in other words, we don't wear women's clothing because we're attracted to women's clothing. That is what cross-dressers do. That is what cross-dressing is. It's a fetish. It's usually men who like to put on women's clothing because there's a sexual thing involved with it. So I want to make that clear. That's what is different between us and cross-dressers. Not that there's anything wrong with cross-dressers. I'm just saying that's the difference. We are not gay men wearing women's clothing. Okay, none of us, that speaking for myself and other women that think like me, we are, could somebody answer that phone?
It's Betty White.
Yeah, figure, she always upstaging me that
Yeah.
one.
I'm sorry. No, that was Pablo Neruda.
Oh,
But
sorry.
anyway,
Oh,
continue.
okay, there you are then. I forget. Please forgive me for that one. Anyway, so we're not men wearing that just like to wear women's dresses. Is all I'm saying. We are not at all attracted to the gender we are presenting. Not all of us are. Just because you see a trans woman doesn't mean she is necessarily attracted to men or women or non-binary. It's like you can't put anybody into a box, and that includes cis people. Why do cis people, they don't put other cis people into boxes.
No.
They seem to want to do that to queer people. It's like, okay, well, you're this, so that means you're this. And so it's like, that's the thing. Ask if you want to know, you know, not that it's anybody's business, but if you want to know what someone's attracted to, ask them. And most queer people are open. Most of them are open books. We want to talk. The reason we want to talk about it is we want to educate. How else are we going to educate if we don't have an opportunity to talk about it? And so that's why these kind of forums are amazing. It's like, you know, someone gets to, you know, talk about this and no one's uncomfortable. At least I'm not. Maybe you are, but I'm not.
I'm not.
I was talking to the masses out there in the dark. It's like,
Can we move on? Now, this all sounds wonderful, and you're so brave for undertaking this journey when you did. But was there any discriminatory or stigmatizing experiences that you faced, and what did you do when this happened?
Well, I've been fortunate that I haven't had those kind of experiences. And that might sound odd, but I think it's maybe because I don't put myself out there that way. Like I would never go and visit the suburbs and walk around like this, for example.
Neither would I.
I just live as me, as a human, and I don't draw a lot of attention to myself, and I'm confident, and I guess that helps. It's like I know who I am, and I feel comfortable who I am, and I found basically just being myself helps me be confident, and I'm happy with the way I am. And not everyone can be that way, of course, and I understand that. It's scary, it's tough, but also I'm older, and that is a factor. The factor that I was able to live all these different situations and learn and teach myself.
But to your credit, you did all of this when you were a young person in an era when there was very little acceptance for this and lots of prejudice and lots of discrimination. So I think you're to be applauded for that. You know, it might seem easy now, but I don't think that we, you know, could assume that it would have been easy in the 70s or the 80s to be a trans person in Toronto.
Well, I wasn't though. I didn't start living as a trans woman until 92.
Ah.
So if the gay thing, of course, was just as, I mean, I'm not the only one who would know that. The gay thing was just as uncomfortable. And there was more of an opportunity when you're living in the gay world to be abused and verbally abused and be attacked than there is now for a trans woman, or for myself anyway, as a trans woman. And it's like I was, so yeah, like I said, I was learning these different things. I learned how to be comfortable with myself, within myself, and not to be afraid because of going through the gay scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because of even going through the theater scene and having to be somebody I'm not and be terrified that I'm going to be discovered, that I'm a big phony and I'm acting like a man and I'm not one.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of things that I could have been outed as.
Mm-hmm.
So the fear was there. It's just people coming at me. A lot of that was in my mind. A lot of it didn't happen. And, you know, I have to be honest, Peter, when it came to people discriminating against me or treating me badly, we'll get right back to the trans thing where I'm living as a trans woman. I've had more difficulty and more abuse from the gay community than I have from the straight community.
From bookers and club people and...
Yes, and that might sound very strange, but it is true. It's, I get verbally abused many times when I go into a gay bar, for example. The way gay men will treat me. I have been walking down the street just as a regular gal, and the only people that have ever outed me, it's happened 3 times throughout the last few years, are gay men pointing me out to somebody they're walking with and outing me. And, you know,
how does that make you feel?
Horrible, because I feel we're queer. Why aren't we protecting each other? Or at least that person you're walking with didn't even notice. You made her or him notice. When I'm just minding my own business, that is dangerous to do that sort of thing to somebody. And there's times when like I said, when I go into the gay bars, either the drag queens are nasty with me, or the extreme gays, the extreme bar gays, I call them, because they're not, I do not put them in with gay men, because gay men are incredible. It's like gay men who are living their life are amazing. I mean, obviously, but the gay men who haven't moved forward
or haven't accepted it, haven't accepted themselves and still feel deep shame, even though they're living an out life and a sexual life in public, but they still feel a deep shame and they've got to find someone to blame it on.
Yes. And you know, the other thing is, Peter, they feel safe in the village, for example, because it's all, you know, gay men. They're kind of, you know, they're acting like the bullies in the playground that picked on them is what they end up acting like. And it's disappointing. And I want to say something, but I don't. I sit there as a lady because I would never, you know.
A lady doesn't say anything. A lady is insulted by a masher on the street and she just keeps walking. Well,
this is the thing, is you can't see, the thing is you can't get into that because that's very unladylike. But it's not just that, it's like they're not going to learn. It would be like talking to a Republican. They don't listen. They're not going to listen. They're not.
We're going to get to the Americans later. Anyway.
But this is the thing. All I'm saying is that is the most unsafe I feel, that I rarely ever go to the village, for example.
In the village, you feel the least safe.
Yes. And you're right. Those men have not grown because they're in the village. And they're not living outside of the village where they see there's a whole world out there where nobody gives a shit. Okay? Nobody cares. You know, I can live as a trans woman in Pickering. I can live as a trans woman in Scarborough. Nobody even thinks about it. Nobody notices until you draw attention to it. You know, until
someone
you
else
embarrass me or you put me in danger.
That's exceptionally cruel, and it's really disappointing to hear that that happens in the heart of what's supposed to be a supportive community in Toronto.
Exactly.
And there should be zero judgment. There should be a full welcome, and there should be just an embracing of the diversity, because teaching queer studies, there's not one way to be queer. There are a million ways to be queer, and it's all intersectional. I mean, I would suggest you are also intersectional. We're all intersectional in many ways. And so therefore, there's nothing to judge.
You think?
Well, I think, but I mean, my intersection with, you know, sort of my identity and being queer is unique compared with someone else's identity and their intersection with being queer or cisgendered or whatever it is. And I don't think it's a basis for judgment, but that's from a scholarly perspective, and as an educator, because we always have to mind that people aren't bullying others and that people feel good at school. So it's you know, the bullying is unfortunate to hear about. Let's move on. Do you have any recommendations for support or resources that are helpful during transition? Maybe were there resources in your era? Are there resources now? Alicia has flashed up a page. Sheridan has a wonderful queer resource page that I didn't really do. I asked the librarians if they could help with it, and they did this amazing job. There we go. And there are many tabs, as you can see, all down the side. Respectful research, books, journals, news media, films, primary. This is organizations and websites, other resources, gender and sexuality, law and justice. So Sheridan's done a really great job at putting together a digital space to reassure queer people coming in that we've got your back, and that if you're interested in that academically, that we're certainly going to support you.
That's incredible. That is incredible you're doing that. I'm so glad the colleges have come so far.
It's not just me, it's
Wonderful.
all sorts of people who are allies and who see someone who's, you know, navigating this through a wilderness and saying, we're here to help. And it was, in terms of my career, was really life-changing, because I didn't think that I had that much support. So it's really wonderful. Okay, and so support or resources that are helpful for people who are considering a trans life or a transition.
I was reading, when I was reading that question, it was difficult for me to come up with something.
It was your question, not mine.
No, I didn't say anything about resources.
Okay.
Are you sure it was one of the original 3 questions that I sent? I don't think it would have been.
This was built up, but do you have any recommendations for support, community support for young people?
On that, I always have to keep coming back to how individual we all are. And
Yes.
Part of when you're asking something like that, where, like, for example, what are good resources or a good place for trans women or trans men or people who are non-binary? Where's a good place for them to go, or what resources is for them to look up? Again, it's individual. It's like, it depends on who they are, how they're feeling, and what they're looking for. Like, for example, if you find a group on Facebook, that's just a search, and you see groups, what you need to do when you're doing this, if somebody is new, I'm talking to the new people out there that are just beginning to discover themselves. Join a group, which is fine, but make sure your thoughts, your principles, and what you're looking for is the same as what they're doing, and don't ever follow. Don't be a sheep ever. Okay, you are an individual, and always remember that you're very, very special. And also, when I say that, when you're putting selfies out, for example, or anything like that, the person, you know, a lot of the young people out there, it's kind of like, I want all these likes, I want to be likes, and they're looking and they're they're testing their existence through acknowledgement of other people. And you have to love yourself first, okay? And if you've already come to a discovery that you are looking to transition, or you're looking for to experience different sexuality, whatever it is, you need to love yourself first. You need to go, you know what, I deserve this, and this is how I feel. And I'm glad that some other people feel the same way as I do, but some of them don't. Should I be feeling like them, or should I be just, and that's the thing, you start doubting when it comes to groups, is what I'm saying. Take out of a group what you can use, and then just move on and make it part of your individuality. I remember a long time ago when I went to AA, and one of the things people were asking me, okay, you went to AA, do you not drink anymore? And I'm going, well, I'm going to tell you, I went to AA at a time where I really needed help. And there was so much more involved than just drinking. It's not drinking. Drinking is not the only problem when it comes to when you have to go to AA. You feel the alcohol is you can never ever stop. I ended up taking what I could out of AA, and then I used it for myself. I didn't follow that whole everybody's going on the same path.
12-step journey.
Exactly. And my path was different. And I remember because my older brother went to AA, and he's been sober for over 40 years. And the thing is that when he even said to me, well, why do you still go to a bar? Or why do you work in a bar? And I'm going, because that's where I make my living. And then he goes, yeah, but you're drinking. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm not doing that kind of drinking. Before I drank alone, I drank during the day, I was drinking all the time because it was covering so much. And this
so that was part of that was a way to suppress or to sort of numb the sort of identity, the you that was struggling to come out of the you.
Self-medicating, yes, exactly.
And so
a lot of it was that. You
were denying your authentic self, and you were using alcohol to help with that process.
That's right, because it was uncomfortable. It was there was something, but that's not the point. Not everybody feels that way. It's just me, the way I felt. And so I ended up putting rules on myself. That's what I ended up doing. And even though my brother kept going, no, there's no such thing. It's turned out there is such a thing. It's like, I will not drink unless I'm in a bar and I feel like drinking. That's it. I will not drink at home. I will not drink during the day. I never drink at family events.
Well, problem drinking is a pattern, and I think for a lot of people, it's a very private experience.
Yes.
It is about unresolved trauma.
Exactly. And you saying that is exactly what I'm reaching out to people out there who are questioning, whether it's trans or queer in general, or whether it's non-binary. That is the point. The point is you're an individual, and you just do it the way you feel you would be comfortable doing it. Nobody can push you further or pull you back. It's you. You're a human being, and you have a life, and don't let anybody else tell you that you're
and
not.
Don't hurt yourself. There are enough people lined up out there to hurt us.
Oh, yes.
Don't hurt yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest messages I can give to young people is don't hurt yourself, because there are so many others who would do it for you if they had the opportunity.
And if you take a picture of yourself to put on Instagram or something, the first like that you should get is from yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't worry about what those other people think. And then if you're transitioning as a trans person, I have to put this out here because not everyone can relate. Your journey is beautiful and it's personal, and you don't need people's approval.
And so it's private is what you're saying. Unless
A lot of it should be until you're ready at that point where you're kind of going, you know what? I don't have to show myself off, but now I want to. And the thing is, it's like what I see with all the youngins that are out there, and they're transitioning, which is beautiful. And then they put up pictures. Oh, look, I have new hair. Oh, look, I'm wearing no makeup. Oh, look, I'm doing this. It's wonderful that people are looking and people are going, oh, you're beautiful. You're this. They're not, these are not real people. Okay, the real people are your family and your close friends. That's the people that are real. If you need support, you need to talk to somebody. But the most important thing is to get back to it. You are the most important. You're the one. You decide. Trans women to come up to me as an older trans woman, they go, what do you think about this nail polish? What do you think? And I'm going, what do you think about it? How do you feel about that? Or how, do you like my hairdo? Do you like your hairdo? And I try and explain that to them. It's not about the minute you can give up needing that approval from other people is the minute you will grow, and that's what we want for you, don't we, Peter? We want you to grow as humans.
Oscar Wilde, the British writer, famously said, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Exactly. And be a confident self. Love yourself. Not every trans woman has to be the same.
Well, not every gay person or queer person actually grows up in love, do they?
No.
And so if you're not going to love yourself, who will do it for you?
Yeah.
And you've mentioned in your work holding on. Well, my American cousins say hanging hope on. What are you hanging hope on? So your message to the world, I think, is extremely positive and hopeful. What are you hopeful about?
Leaving something, educating as many people as possible. I never did become a teacher. It's one of my regrets.
We need part-time people all the time. You should come and apply.
No. I have a mini bucket list. The thing I want to do is I'm coming out with a comedy album this year. Only because I want to, not because I'm trying to make money at it. This is the entertainment business. We never make money unless you're in the United States. But anyway, the thing is then I've got my second book coming out. So these are things that I'm looking forward to doing and continuing on with who I am and what I am. So things are left for other people, young people who are growing, and then they're looking online, they go, oh, Mandy Goodhandy, I wonder, I'd be interested in reading that book. Maybe I'll learn something. And even if they learn one thing, then I've done my job and I've left something behind for all these wonderful young people out there, whether you're queer or not. It's like you got so much ahead of you, and we're always learning. We never stop learning. We never do, and it's so exciting. But I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. It does. So we're coming up, we want a little bit of a Q&A, and there are people waiting to speak or to ask you questions. But
we never talked about music theater, did we?
Well, music theater. Yes. Did you ever work in musical theater?
Oh, yeah, I did at the beginning. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
The very first summer, I was fortunate. I went to my first audition was for summer stock in Grand Bend, and I got hired for the summer. We did 4 musicals, and an interesting thing is when I was taking the business course before we went into music theater, I auditioned for the 2 musicals that Sheridan was doing, and the first one was Your Good Man Charlie Brown, and the second one was Oh What a Lovely War. And this is how I knew I wanted music theater. As soon as I got into a musical, because when I was in high school, I only did plays. There was no music theater.
They didn't do operetta or anything like that.
They didn't do anything like that. And then I got a chance to put on dance shoes and dance. And it was what I went, oh, this is wonderful. And I had Maureen Schoen when I went to Sheridan, the dance instructor. Unfortunately, she passed in 2011. Loved that woman to death. Don Graves, I don't think he ever realized how much I appreciated. He was the music director. And Rod Maxwell, the famous Rod Maxwell, he was the director. And God, did he teach me a lot. He took me off my little pedestal and threw me right to the ground and went, you're starting
all over again. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was tough, but you know what? He was incredible. Absolutely. I appreciated him later when I look back and I went, oh God, now I know what he was doing. Okay, I knew exactly what he was doing.
Has that impacted your work as a talent booker?
Oh yes, for sure. I knew how not to treat people. No, I knew. Cheryl,
There had to be at one of those moments. Go on.
yeah, no, it's, you know what the thing is, it's like he was tough, but the thing is that he didn't have a lot of kindness there, so he was very unapproachable. So I kind of just throw in a little kindness too, so that I'm not like totally degrading these young people. But like I said, he did it for a reason. It toughened me up. It was like my dad did and my brother did. It worked out in my favor because I was able to take being turned down for auditions and knowing that I wasn't right for a part and not taking it to heart. But what happened with Your Good Man, Charlie Brown, I was cast as Linus at Sheridan College because I was a dancer. And then when I did it in Huron Country Playhouse, they cast me as Schroeder, which is probably the most miscast ever.
Can you play piano?
One, I can't play piano. Two, that he does this song where it's and it's like, and I still had trouble with my diction as if Ron Cameron is here, he could probably tell you that. But the thing is, it's like I still had trouble, and I'm trying to sing this song. It's really, really fast. And it's like I couldn't do it. I was terrible at that part. But the interesting thing was the guy who played Schroeder at Sheridan College was the same guy that ended up playing Linus for the
So you switched roles.
We switched. And he wasn't a great dancer. And I thought, why are they giving him the dance role? It's like, it doesn't make sense, you know? So, but anyway, whatever. He's a sweetheart though. You know, he was.
Mandy, we've got about 12 questions, and
Okay,
believe it or not, we've got about 5, or well, we'll take a little bit longer. How do we help trans kids and other trans people build their confidence and feel included in society? I don't know if we can work on the straight people to do that for us. So how do queer people support trans kids and other trans people who are at the beginning of their journey or somewhere in their journey?
Okay, this is the one big thing. Listen to them. Okay, that is number one. It's not about you. It's not about you learning their pronouns. It's not about you helping them dress. It's nothing about that. Listen to what they have to say. When you are talking to them, say, how do you feel? How do you want to feel? Will this make you or help you feel better? Do you want to just try this out and it's cool? And if you decide it's not for you, that's cool too. Because there are times when people do think that they might be trans, but it turns out they're not. And that's okay. You know, it's like they're questioning, they're experimenting. But that's the main thing that I would say, Peter, is let them know that you're there for them. Okay, and anything they need to ask, or if they need a shoulder to cry on, anything they need, I'm here for you. It's your journey. Unfortunately, you have to do it yourself mainly.
That's what you mean by handling what life gives you.
Yes.
Because ultimately it is an individual. I mean, unless you start the journey is never going to happen. And people are afraid to start the journey because the journey is an individual one. You're not riding or going with someone else. This is a journey that you begin on your own and that you experience on your own. I would think any diverse sexuality or diverse gender we could say the same things about it. But I think there's an exceptional amount of bravery to live the truth as a sex positive trans person. And I think that it is just so commendable, and that you haven't fallen apart is absolutely wonderful. And you're still here and you're still fabulous. And I think that's well, absolutely incredible.
Even if a young trans person decides to read my book or anything, don't be me, be you. But there might be something in there that you can take out of it. It's like anything. Or look, when you join a group, something you can take, like I said about AA, there's something there for you to take out of it. Just remember, you do not have to be them, because you're not.
Right. Okay, so I have basically one more question before we get to a Q&A, if there are questions.
I love that people are making comments here. I haven't had a chance to read your comments.
I know. So but tell us about your next book, and then we'll go to the questions.
Oh, okay. My next book, I did a talk at Toronto University. I've spoken there twice. And one was about it was a history professor, and one of the talks was about the history of sex work, of all things. Not that I would know anything about that, but anyway, so she wanted me to come in and talk to the class. And then after I had a talk with her, she said, I really enjoyed your book, she said, but the section about sex work, you had so many stories and interesting things to say about sex work. Have you considered doing a book just concentrating on that? And I didn't really want to do that. And I thought this book was hard enough to put together. But I want to concentrate on just the sex work and the funny side of sex work, the serious side of sex work, the ladies that work the street, the people who have to do sex work, which is the unfortunate part, the people who don't have to, the people who want to make it a business. It's still so underground that people look upon it as disgusting. And you should, like sitcoms and things like that, for example, it's like the funny one is a hooker. Oh, I'm very a hooker. So
Or the tired hooker, or the retired
Yes.
hooker, or the old hooker.
the way they used to present gay people in movies, it used to be all that. Oh, there's the token gay. He flights in and does all this. It's
Sort
that
of like
type of
Paul
thing.
Lind with your hands flapping
Yeah.
around and
That's
being
what I mean. It's like they
very
don't know it.
mean-spirited and
You have to be normalized because we're human beings first before we're anything else. So this is what, so it's going to be called Waiting for a Butt. And we're going to see where that goes when I decide to finish the book.
and who do you publish with?
I don't have a publisher, and I say that to people and people are always surprised. I self-published my first one.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk to a friend at Cormorant Books who might be interested
Oh,
because
well, that would be nice.
they do queer.
Oh,
That-
wow, okay. All right,
Yeah.
you're all my witnesses that he offered that.
I didn't say I was going to publish a book. All I said was that I could bring it to someone's attention. Alicia, could we open it up to questions now? Because there are at least 12 comments or questions. And again, I'm just going to refill my water and I will be right back. And then we can start with the questions and go for another 15, maybe. I know it's 8:30 now, but
Yeah, I think another 15 minutes, if everyone is okay with that.
I'm fine with that. I could be here all night.
that's what we said last night. Or yes, when we met, we said we were going to have a telethon.
You know, I'm fine.
Cher will be there, Lucille Ball, everyone's going to be there. Doris Day will be there. And then just call 1-800 Sheridan Gay
Yeah.
or Sheridan Queer, and then we can raise funds that way. So I will join you again in just a second. And now hopefully, Alicia, you could help me by opening up the questions and comments. Yes. All right.
So Mandy, I'll start off with Ron's comment. So he says, thank you for such honesty on your journey. You pushed some buttons for me tonight. I hope Sheridan keeps this interview posted online for years to come.
Oh, thank you, Ron. Thank you.
So another question.
I hope you're not still smoking those Benson Hedges. It's Ron Cameron, right?
Yes.
I hope you gave up the Benson Hedges cigarettes, darling. He was so elegant. It's with him. He would have his legs crossed and smoke at these big cigarettes, and it was like, yeah, it was great.
So let us know, Ron. So another question. So Kristen says, I've been blown away at your self-reflection at such an early age. Mandy, what is your advice when raising and nurturing children to be who they should be? Great question.
I think some of that was answered when I said, just listen to them, ask them gently. If you see something where you feel it's different, like they're different, a lot of the times you need to let them come out with it. But if you know how to kindly nudge it, just bring it up. Don't make it a big deal ever. Like if you, for example, if you have a little boy who's decided he's going to put on little dresses and he's comfortable and he's enjoying
Just going to say that, yes.
Yes, and that doesn't mean that they're trans either. It's important that I say that. I have met many heterosexual cis men that have said, oh, I went through I was wearing my mother's high heels. It was just something they did and then they moved on. It's like a toy any kid would have. So don't panic, okay, and let them just work through it. And if you think it's getting to the point where, you know what, this might be a gender thing, or this might even be a queer thing, be gentle about it and just ask, do you think that, how do you feel about, those kind of questions?
I have a friend who experienced that. Her son is grown and he is a young gay man, but he was very interested in feminine presentation as a little boy. And she did nothing about it. She didn't make a big deal, but she said the one thing that was heartbreaking for her as a mother was she came back from work once. It was winter. It was a bit late. There was no food. Well, not no food, but she needed to go shopping. And her son was there. He was about 4 or 5 back from school, and he was all dressed up. He had a towel over his head, his long hair, and he was wearing,
towel, yeah, okay.
and he was wearing one of her slips as a dress. And he had shoes that he was wearing. And anyway, he didn't want to change, and she had to go grocery shopping. And she thought, I don't want to fight. It's the beginning of the evening. Everyone's had a long day. And so she took him shopping, but someone stopped her and wore her out as a mother. What do you think of that? Like, told her she was being a horrible mother, and her child was on the wrong track, and this was going to damage him.
Sometimes the most simple responses to people are probably the best responses, because you can't go head to head with haters. It never works, or with bullies. We all know that. So a simple thing of, is this your child? No. Then mind your own business, please. Thank you. It's like you just have to keep it simple. That I'm just, this is my opinion. I'm not saying that's what they should do, but I know that my mother had to confront a couple of people when I was really skipping around and that type of thing. My mother, how she handled it, believe it or not. It was like, well, none of your business. It's like, why is it their business anyway?
Scottish women are,
make it their business.
Scottish women are tough that way.
Oh yeah, they have you don't want to fill with
something to say. Something to say about my boy. My grandmother was like that. Okay, have we got more questions?
Sorry, and I just want to make a comment is, as a parent or a caregiver, I think it's really important to remind your child that you will love them no matter what, right? And you are their number one supporter.
They have to know that. You're absolutely right. They need to have someone, when they're ready, they will know they don't have to be scared of you as a parent. They know they can come for comfort. It's a wonderful thing.
I'm also wondering, does that mean we have to educate parents as well to be more accepting?
Only if they want to be, because you can't force any of that, as you know, on people who are adults at this point. It's too late for the adults when it comes to that, because they are the way they are. If they love their children and they think there's something different and they decide they want to learn something, then that's something else. If they decide they want to go to a group where other people are experiencing this, that was wonderful. It's probably the most amazing thing that a parent can do. But you can't change them with their thought on it. All you can do is just ask them to be patient.
Well, thank God for Cherry DeNovo, who made sure that the conversion therapy was thrown out in Ontario.
Oh, that nonsense.
That was one thing she did as but that was one thing she did as an ally and as an MPP, was to ensure that conversion therapy came to an end, because it's child abuse. And is just as illegal as beating your child, I think. So who else do we have with questions?
Yeah, so Catherine says, I just want to say thank you for this. It has helped me so much. As a cis mom with a non-binary early 20s child, to understand more about transitioning. And that just warms my heart, Catherine, because this is exactly what we're all hoping would happen for tonight.
That is great. When non-binary came along, and I can say that safely because it was never really around. People never, except for the True Spirit people, but that was like years and years ago, and we didn't understand it because as people who stole their land, we didn't give a shit. you know, of what their lives were about. But it's a beautiful, beautiful culture that was smashed by organized religion, as we all, I won't get into this. But anyway, so the thing is,
You just did. But
I know I can't help myself. Anyway, so these non-binary, wonderful non-binary humans that are out there now, we can learn so much from them. It's vice versa here. But the thing is, I didn't understand it. I didn't. I was already raging on about drag queens and cross-dressers interfering with the trans movement. Okay, that was my big thing. It's like, stop confusing us. We're not the same. Then when non-binary came along, I was kind of going, okay, wait a minute. Okay, now they're changing pronouns. And I thought, this is really just out of my realm to even think and file or anything like that. But it's not up to me. It's no one's looking for my approval. It's not up to me to kind of go, oh yeah, you're blessed, you're fine. But what I did was I sat down and spoke to this wonderful non-binary person. That's how I understood it, was going, talk to me about this. I want to know, you know, because they were saying it. It was an open mic, music mic, interestingly enough. And they were the child of a couple that used to come all the time. And even the couple went, I don't understand, you know, why they're feeling, you know, like, and I'm going, well, talk to them. And so I sat down with this beautiful person, just wonderful person, and said, explain this to me. Not that you have to, but please explain it. So I'll be one more person who can answer questions for you. And they explained it so beautifully, and it made so much sense. And I went, wow, nice. Yeah.
And
So
it
there
is,
you are.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
I think the way, I mean, I see the notion of non-binary in the teaching that I do and in the scholarship that I use with my students, and I find it a very liberating category. You don't have to be one thing or the other. You can be whomever you like.
And
And
it's all about getting rid of the boxes, right? It's like,
well, you
stop
can,
putting
and
me in a
you
box.
can perform your gender in different ways on different days at different hours. And, you know, just like it is not anyone's business how your child is acting, it's not anyone's business how you are acting or how you are performing. And I think people need to understand that. We don't need people to police or cancel our behavior, our performances, or our identities. Thank you very much, because we're doing just fine.
Like
Right.
the Republicans like to go on about, right?
Okay, so more questions. We've got 15 questions lined up.
So who was the biggest support or mentor in coming out as a wonderful transgender woman?
Who was my biggest supporter?
And mentor, yeah.
Me. Well, there wasn't anybody else. It's there wasn't anybody. Probably the closest would have had to be my older sister, only because she knew what I was always like. And so this was no big shock to her. And it was kind of like, well, you're not acting any different. You're not being any different. Well, that's right, because at home I was always me. And so she's going, well, you're just dressing different. That's all. I went, well, yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. It's like, I'm just dressing the way I'm comfortable, but I'm still the same person, you know?
I think personhood transcends sexuality and gender, don't you?
Well, yeah, this is the, I like I said, I hate boxes, and I think that people should just live. We're people. Why can't we be a human first, and then everybody else stop worrying about all the rest of it? I'm always confused about that. And you know, and you know what it comes down to, back to the Republicans, it always comes down to the genitals for some weird, sick reason. It always seems to do that.
There's a fascination among American conservatives with genitalia.
Yes.
And yet they consider everyone else predatorial or rapey or any of these.
Meanwhile, they have the highest percentage of senators and people in their political movement that have been discovered to be pedophiles.
Yes.
The highest percentage, and no one talks about it.
No. Yeah. All right. So other questions?
Sure, yes.
Alicia,
So
I can't see
Mandy,
them.
Ron says, I kicked smoking decades ago. Good for you, Ron. And he says, track him down on Facebook. He would love to get together with you. So much to talk about.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Yes, okay.
So a follow-up to Kristen's questions about supporting children. So what happens to the parent who is more assertive about gender equality than the child who is scared to be who they wish to be?
Interesting.
Hmm.
Thanks, Kirst.
Yeah, you might have to reword that a little differently.
I would.
Thank you,
So
Peter.
what happens if a parent is really convinced that their child is queer and starts giving the sort of stage mother push to, you've got to start living this, and a child might not be ready,
Yeah,
if I understood correctly.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's very dangerous. I mean, no parent would ever come and ask me that kind of advice, obviously, or what they should do, but anybody out there who sees it happening, and it's people that are close to your life that you can actually say something, then I think it's a situation of exactly what Peter just said. I mean, it's like, it has to be up to the child. As a parent, how can you decide that? You're not living in their body, you're not living in their mind, you're not, it's like, how can you make that decision or feel one way or the other? And you don't ever push anybody to do anything.
Right.
I guess
Okay.
I think she's also asking though, like knowing their child, knowing that they're scared to be
Oh,
who they
knowing,
want to
okay, like,
be.
yeah,
How did they
even then, it's not their place, and I understand it, that they want to do it to help the child. And we do naturally. I'm just about to say we do as parents naturally. Well, I've had pets. But we, as parents, we want to be able to guide our children and our kids. And we see them either hurting or being confused. But this is a whole totally different thing. This is taking a human being and trying to mold them into another human being that they're not ready to be molded into yet, which is that side that's deep down inside of them, where they have that scared, that even if they're a child, they have that even more scared child crawled up inside. They're not ready. They're just not ready. And then you could, by saying one slight thing, you could traumatize them. It could be very traumatic. I was in denial when I came out being gay. I didn't want to be gay. I was in denial. It's like I was scared to death. And it's like, and if somebody had come up to me and said, "Oh, let me help you get into that world," I would have just fainted. And it was the same with being trans. There was somebody I met in a strip business of all people, this glorious male stripper that was in the business, and he was very, it was an empath. And he used to look at me and go, "You're a woman, right? And this is when I was living as a man and I wanted to be a man." And I said, "No, why are you saying that?" "No, I'm not." But he saw that in me. But the way he was saying it, he wasn't pushing or insulting or offending. He was just, as a matter of fact, "You're a woman. You have so much
That's
more."
your avunculate. That was someone who took you aside and said, "This is what it is. What are your questions?"
And
Right?
he said that, yes, and he said it in such a beautiful way that I was offended, or not offended, but I was upset at the time because I was trying to fool people, and that he had seen right through it, and he was talking about my energy, you see, and that's where I got confused. And it wasn't until later on I was looking back and going, oh, he wasn't saying that I'm looking like a woman. He was saying that I am a woman, and he could feel the energy, the feminine energy. And he knew it was just flirting and, waiting to just pop out. So, but there was no pushing or anything, or telling people. So yeah, you want to protect your child, and you want your child to be happy. And if you see that your child may be trans or whatever, it's still not something that I would ever suggest. But that's just me. I'm not a doctor. So
Okay, we've got maybe time for one or two more questions.
So Kristen says, such an important discussion about support. So thank you very much for that, Mandy. My question that I would really like to know is, how can allies best support transgender individuals and contribute to creating a more inclusive society?
Can you word that a little differently?
Yeah, so how might people in generally in society at large be more supportive of trans individuals, no matter how old they are or are not? How might they do that actively so that people actually feel that the community is rallying around them?
Okay.
Yeah, it could be like at Sheridan, it could be anywhere, like
Yeah.
how can we better support?
Yeah, there's a big one on that, and number one is don't be silent, but know when to not be silent. So that might sound odd, but what happens is, like, for example, if a trans person posts something on Facebook, for example, and it sounds like they're scared, or they're talking about something that they read that's like the Republic, as I always keep coming back to that. It's scary for young people. It's scary for young trans people. This is just an example. Because if it happens down there, it could spill up here. Okay, look at Alberta. And the thing is, look at the talking points that politicians are starting to use up here, the same talking points as they started using down there. Donald Trump started a movement of hate. And the way he did it was, even though he probably doesn't even hate the people he goes on about, but he wants that base to vote for him. And the thing is, so what he's done is he's made it okay for people to speak like that. And all these people that was all on the surface, they're all bigots, they're all, all those kind of people, white supremacists, whatever they are, it was always there. But he made it all right for them.
They're emboldened now and they're empowered.
Yes.
And they actually have representation in government.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene or someone like that.
And it's like I was saying yesterday about the drag queens. They're coming after drag queens, not because they don't give a damn it's drag queens. They give a damn as a gay man under that costume. And so now they're trying to shift it all back to the gays and hate the gays again and hate same-sex marriage. So everything that they come up with, it's all about going back to, let's hate Black people again. They're taking our country. Let's hate brown people. They're moving in and taking our jobs. Let's hate queer people because they're trying to turn kids gay. That's what that is all about. So on that note, it could spill up here, and this is where this is the scary part. And trans people like myself, not me necessarily, because I don't give a damn about those people and I won't listen to them, but that's me. I'm older, I'm more experienced. I'm scared for the younger people who are reading this, looking at the hate that they were shielded from for so long, and being scared to death that it's going to come up here and it's going to happen up here, because it could.
It very well could.
It certainly could. When people go on about, oh, it's so friendly in Canada. Are you kidding? Have you seen the way some people have been in Canada? We're not all friendly. Okay, it's a simple matter of somebody gives them permission to show their hate, they'll show their hate. And then before you know it, we'll have it. Exactly. And it's going to be very, very terrifying. So what I'm saying is, if you see a trans person or a queer person making a post that saying they're afraid, and this is what happens, you have to speak out. You are an ally. Please be an ally. And please say, oh, we hope that doesn't happen, or we're sorry to hear this. And please show your support that way. And what happens is a lot of people are scared. They don't know how to react to it because they're not in our world. But if you want to be in our world, that's how you get into our world. Show us that you support us. Show us that you're afraid for us as well, and that you will not let this happen. And there's too much people out there being silent.
And show us that you consider us to be equal to everyone else you know.
Yes, because once you're not, that's when they pick on you. It all stems from the playground. Every single thing that's happening stems from that playground.
I always say that life really is like high school.
Mm.
And that sort of happens. Further, we've got 18 comments or questions now.
Yeah, so we are all done with the questions. Yep.
We finished. Okay. All right. Well, and we've run a little bit over time. Mandy, this has been fascinating, and we're
Oh,
going
yeah.
to have to have you back when you've got your second book together. I'd also like to have you come and speak at an event to not just my students, but to students in general. And I just say that I have so much admiration for who you are and what you do and what you continue to do and how you're still a positive and on, I don't know you that at all really, but I just sense love coming from you, and how in spite of everything that's happened and the long road that you've walked, you are still emanating love. And I just wanted to say that that's a beautiful thing.
And that's not hard to do, depending on the company, definitely.
Yes.
You know,
And
it's like, yeah.
sorry, and to echo what Peter just said, yes, we would love to have you back. Folks, we only got through about half of the questions we had for
We
Mandy.
didn't get very far.
So we
sorry.
are hoping to have her back in the fall. If she's willing to come back to Sheridan, it's just been an absolutely honor to have you here, Mandy.
Oh, thank you.
There's a last message from Roger. Could you please read that for us, Alicia?
Oh, sure. I'm a younger trans man, and I feel privileged to hear the story as someone who's been in the community much longer than I have. It's inspiring to know that trans folks have been here for a long time and that will continue to be here, hopefully forever, kicking butt and showing all the diversity and beauty of humans. Roger, you're going to make me cry.
Yes.
That is a wonderful place to start. And look, Mandy, don't ruin your makeup, but yes, isn't that a wonderful and empowering message from a young person just starting out? So so inspiring. So do you have hope about the next generation, Mandy?
Oh, God, yes. I have yes, I have nothing but positivity about that. And do you want to know one of the reasons why? The Republicans are now trying to turn against the Gen Zs. And they're turning against the Gen Zs because they're scared. The Gen Zs are going to create another world, just like the millennials started it, the Gen X's before that. And I'm telling you, we have to have faith in these young people, and especially you Gen Zs, get out there and vote. Okay, always vote. Don't ever think it's not important, because it is. It's so important. Vote. Let's kick these people out. You know,
And let's, vote for people who want equity and diversity and inclusion,
yes,
and a welcome and an end to discrimination, harassment. That's what we want. So
thank you so much for your questions, by the way, all
Yeah.
you wonderful people. And Roger, you owe me a tube of mascara. Okay.
I know I had this huge long script written for thank you, but Roger, you said it better than I could have. So I just really want to end it there. Thank you, Peter and Mandy. Again,
my
such a
pleasure.
powerful and inspiring conversation tonight.
Thank you.
Such an honor to have both of you here. You're both trailblazers.
Well, I've wanted to meet Mandy for years, and I never thought that we would actually meet in a way like this and have like a sit down, really smart discussion, so that I could also be educated.
Oh, it was fun and interesting. And Ron, special kisses to you, darling. Congratulations from years ago, giving up smoking.
All right. Well, that's it then, yes?
Yes, that's
So
it.
we want to thank everyone for joining us. This was a fabulous conversation. It's always wonderful to bring diversity and diverse initiatives to the college. And I thank the college for inviting me to be one of the hosts today of this conversation. And Mandy, it was excellent meeting you.
So thank you, Sheridan College. I love you. You're an important part of my life. Thank you so
We
much.
love you back. We love you back. Absolutely.
Good night.
Okay, have a good night, everyone. Bye
All
now.
right. Thank you. Bye.